Hello, everybody. It is great to be here one more time today. And my name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO, president, and founder of GSD Get Shit Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. We believe that intellectual capacity is evenly spread, but opportunities are not. I'm a 17-time serial entrepreneur with several unicorns under the belt. I was on the original management team of Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce, and also Eva.ai, an AI HR tech company. And with that, I have an incredible guest today, a friend for many years now, my friend Stefan Schandera. He's a CEO at Gigahertz Ventures GmbH. I mean, he's got an incredible background from everything and studying at St. Petersburg University in the Russian languages, all the way to university in Berlin, studying East European studies. And with that, I'd like to bring him on board. Hi, Stefan. How you doing today, buddy?
Thanks a lot, Gary. Thanks a lot for having me in the show. Thanks a lot for this invitation. Doing good. How are you doing?
Good. So I got a question for you. You know, you're the only person I've ever seen that studied in Kharkov and in St. Petersburg. Now, what was the difference?
The difference between Kharkov and St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
It's a long story, actually, because what took me to Kharkov, it's quite some story, at least for me. And nowadays, I think we say Kharkiv.
Yes, Kharkiv.
Right. I was starting my first business when I was 25, and during my late 20s, I already had some kind of a midlife crisis and thought I have to take some time off and learn another language. Right. And initially I was thinking about learning Portuguese and going to Brazil. And I had some marvelous beaches in my mind. And it was already set up with the language school and tickets booked and so on. But then I saw a very crazy, in the late night show in German TV. On German TV, I saw a crazy movie, a Russian movie. And for some reason, I thought, well, that's a kind of exciting. And do not forget, I come from East Germany. I went to West Germany before the war was abolished, but I grew up in East Germany, right? So we had a lot of Russian soldiers and families here. So there was already some kind of attachment. And we also learned some basic Russian in school. But when I actually had my first kind of early midlife crisis and saw this movie, I thought, well, that's interesting. And we know very little about this. We talk about the late 90s here, right? And there was very little unknown about Russia and Ukraine and all these countries back then. Some old folks, they were still well connected to these countries, but in my generation, not so much. And then I thought, again, with having Brazil and the beaches and Portuguese language in mind, I thought, well, what about learning Russian or refreshing your Russian, since you actually kind of grew up with this language? And then I started to contact various people and universities in different places, Moscow, St. Petersburg, Kharkiv, Kiev. And the most responding people back then were people from Kharkiv. And so it actually it turned out to be a great adventure by being an entrepreneur, but then sitting in we talk about October when I went to Kharkiv, right? It was really chilly. And we were sitting in a classroom in November without heating, because the heating started only mid-November, and it was really chilly.
And were you staying in a student dorm too?
Actually, I spent a lot of times in student dorms, but I had my own apartment with some elderly lady living there. So I didn't have an apartment. I had my own space, but spent a lot of time with students from all over the world. Like I remember Syria, Lebanon, China. So this was a group of students who actually prepared for doing proper studies in Russian language in Ukraine, and I was in this group of people. Yeah.
And how long were you there, Stefan?
This wasn't for too long, for 4 months altogether. I intended to stay there for 1 year, but during some break, I went back home, and then a lot of new projects just appeared in Germany. So business was going good, doing well, and so I could actually decided to stay in Germany for a little longer, and yeah, so I didn't go back to
Wow. And how
finish
was life
studies.
in Kharkiv? How was it?
I think I still actually had the chance to catch a little bit of this late 1990s period with all the transition. For example, there were no, back in 2000, there were no supermarkets in Ukraine. They just popped up by 2003, 2004. And then I had a rather new BMW back then. This was just my car, you know. And there weren't really a lot of foreign cars back then in Ukraine. So I was surrounded by a lot of Zhiguli and Lada and all these cars. And 5 years later, this totally changed. This was a totally different country. But back in 2000, I think I still were able to catch some of this kind of Soviet atmosphere. It was
So
exciting. I loved it.
and how were the people when you met with them? Was it like East Germany? Were they different? And how was the mentality different?
From East Germany, you mean?
Yeah.
Good question, big question. I mean, there's still let's say the Russian and Ukrainian culture on one hand, and the German culture on the other hand. And in Germany you have two parts. You have East Germany and West Germany with different legacies over the last 50, 60 years. So I would not say that we had so much in common with Ukrainians. The thing is, they were much more interested in what is going on in Germany than Germans were interested back then, right? 2000.
Yeah.
In what is going on in Russia and Ukraine. And I do remember when I told friends about Ukraine and all this, a lot of them didn't know that this country existed. So they still thought this is part of Russia, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of people, I mean, they went through a totally different transition period with a lot of poverty. So this was really, and still is for a lot of people, not really a nice time, the 1990s in Ukraine and also Russia. Different for me in East Germany. I mean, remember, I went to West Germany before the wall came down. I was in my late teens. And when I was 20, the world was open, so I traveled the world a lot and studied in different countries and all this. And I think the Ukrainian world back then, for those people whom I met there, was still kind of isolated. I knew that there was a lot of migration going on, so a lot of Ukrainians went, for example, to the US and Canada. But for those people whom I met in Ukraine, I still had language issues. My Russian was almost zero, my Ukrainian as well. So the communication was a bit difficult at the beginning. But yes, it felt still very isolated. Even coming from Poland, entering the border into Ukraine, it felt like 2-3 decades ago, like traveling
That's
to the
amazing.
past. Yeah.
That is amazing. It's funny how fast it changed, and then
Oh, yes.
fast it just recently changed again. So you did
Absolutely.
that. You went to Lowen Partners, and you were an intern as a Jungi Liberali. You were in manager in Dresden. So as you
Yeah.
went down through this, as you're going down through, you became a lecturer, executive manager, and mentor. What made you decide to go to Kazakhstan with the UN for a volunteer job? What would you just wake up one day and said, "Oh, I think I'm going to go down to Kazakhstan and hang out"?
Well, the thing was actually that when you come to a place like Ukraine, again, back in 2000, different world, um, and you start to understand Russian, you get more interested in other countries in this huge territory, right? Russia, Kazakhstan, and so on. So as I said, I returned back to Germany. I got married in Germany actually, and business was doing well, but I still had this excitement about this big unknown, to me unknown world, right? And so I always kept an eye on opportunities in this region. And at some point, the opportunity popped up to support the development of a business incubator in Kazakhstan with the United Nations. And so I applied, and a couple of weeks later, my wife and I, we were in Kazakhstan.
Wow. And what did she say about that? Was that because I mean Kazakhstan depends on I don't know where is this close to Astana or to
No, it's actually very much in the south. It's like Shymkent. And Shymkent is considered, or it has the nickname Texas. So it's
really?
considered to be the Texas of Kazakhstan. No, she was excited, and I think it was a great experience for both of us. She was an artist, so she was also able to work in a totally different environment as an artist and catch a lot of inspiration. So no, it was a nice experience for the two of us.
And so you went from there back to Leipzig. Now, how was that? You go to this wild place, and all of a sudden you're back in Leipzig again. Did you get bored?
You took all this from my LinkedIn profile, right? Because it doesn't actually tell much about these places I had been to in the meantime. From Kazakhstan, I actually went to Uzbekistan. So I almost for 2 years I lived in Tashkent.
Well,
And
how was that?
amazing, again amazing. It was a very closed country, and it still opened up a couple of years ago. But back then, I went to Uzbekistan in 2005. It was very isolated. There was, I think, the U.S. Army was there in this overall Afghanistan context, but they had to leave just before I went there. And a wonderful place, lovely people, just like in Kazakhstan and in Ukraine, different but very hospital and lovely people, very open-minded, but again, very much isolated.
Now, how you like those isolated places, huh? I'm hearing a common theme. It's like you go to these places that are isolated, and then so you spent 2 years there. How was it? Was the food good? Was the environment nice?
Uzbek food is excellent. I mean, Kazakh food is good and Ukraine food is good, but Uzbek food is really good. I can really recommend this. And it's interesting if you once you get involved into all these cultures, and also not on LinkedIn, I also spent about 6 months in Georgia back in 2004, right? So I also had a chance to get some insight into the Caucasian and Georgian culture. But Central Asia is quite exciting because it's a melting pot of cultures. You have the Persian culture from the south, you have the Mongolian and Chinese culture from the east, you have the Russian influences and the Turkish influences from the west, and in Uzbekistan it all comes together, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you get in touch with a lot of very unique cultures, and yes, people were just exciting.
Wow, that's fantastic. You really. But then, how in the world? What happened when you go back and you're in Germany after having all this exciting life? Did you get bored?
It's very different, and I returned back to Germany actually for family reasons, because in 2014 I was in a situation where I had to move between Ukraine and Kosovo all the time. So I jump countries now again, but I was working in Kosovo, family was in Kiev, so I had to move between these two places all the time. And then there was this situation in Kiev in 2014, and our son had to go to school in 2016. So we had to think about where to put the boy into school. So we decided to go back to Germany, and Germany is very different. It's very it's not as exciting in terms of, let's say, adventures. It's a very stable country, but once you get involved with, for example, startup development, it's just as exciting as any other place. It's just much more settled and quiet. But also keep in mind that during the 1990s, I'm in East German, so we had this transition phase in Eastern Germany as well, right? As well as in Eastern Europe. So, but Eastern Germany, when I came back, was already more settled, more stable. So yes, for some people it's boring. If you care about getting your child into a good school in a safe place, I think it's just a good place.
Oh, that's great. And so you went back to Leipzig. Then were you living in Washington, working with the World Bank? Or were you just going back and forth?
I was going back and forth. The head office was in Washington, D.C., so we had this global team. And I was actually working as a regional facilitator for the Eastern European and Central Asian region for the InfoDev, Information for Development program. And the head office was in Washington, D.C. And so I think I could even have moved to DC, but this was not really on my agenda. So I was basically moving places within Eastern Europe. So I spent time in Russia, in Ukraine, in Central Asia, and moved between these places all the time.
Interesting. So, as you were going down through it, I remember one time you told me you rode a motorcycle across Russia.
True, yes. Initially,
I think it was a Honda Africa or something. You had a special. Is that true?
How do you remember these things? This was Honda Africa Twin, and I really adore this motorcycle. It's an exciting technology, super stable. And yes, I did a trip from Dresden to first to Ukraine, and then to Russia, and then to Kazakhstan, to Almaty, and then Western Siberia, so up north, Western Siberia, Uralsk, and then Ukraine and back to Germany. Yeah, was super
And
nice.
how was it? Was there a lot of wildlife out there? Did you see a lot of wildlife, Stefan, when you were there wolves and bears and things? How was it?
It's not like a safari. I mean, you saw some wildlife, but not as much. I really enjoyed to be in a steppe. You have to steppe in the US. We do not have these places in Europe, but in Kazakhstan you have this steppe as well. So I spent a lot of time traveling this steppe, and there you have a lot of wildlife. You have a lot of wild horses and eagles and all this. I didn't actually get in touch with wolves, but wild dogs quite plenty.
And you said you saw wild horses?
Well, they were running free, and I couldn't see.
Really? Wow.
I couldn't see anybody near, so I
Wow, that's
reckon.
Now, was it safe, Stefan, when you're out there riding the motorcycle? I mean, was it? Because I bet some people never saw a motorcycle like that coming across Siberia. Was it safe or not?
I would not say I was the first one, but yeah, this was back in 2009, so not that many people. That's true. And yeah, I met a lot of people from Russia and Kazakhstan who actually asked me why I couldn't afford a car and had to had to travel on a motorbike, right? But it was safe. And I have to say, if you travel alone, and I was often approached by friends who asked me whether I could take them to a tour doing the same thing, and I said, yeah, we could think about this, but doing this on your own brings you in a situation where even when you have some more risky environments, people appreciate that you do this on your own, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a kind of appreciation that gives you some sort of security. I'm not sure whether this is different in a group, and the communication is
Wasn't your
different.
family nervous about you? Just, oh, well, see you later. I'll be back.
Kind of. No, but really, I mean, you have to care about a lot of things like the weather and the road conditions, and just apply common sense. But no, it felt very safe, I have to say. There was a few situations, but nothing really dangerous.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so let's talk about what you're doing at Gigahertz. So I know you're a CEO, partner, and co-founder of Gigahertz, and you say smart capital for technology-based founders and startups. So what's Gigahertz all about?
Gigahertz was actually born in 2019 out of an exit of a tech company in Chemnitz. It's actually also Saxony near Dresden. And this company developed geolocation systems, including hardware and software, and it served major industrial players, especially in the automotive industry. And in 2018, the company was sold to a major German tech company. And so we worked together, and the previous owners and I decided to stay together and to form a business angel syndicate. And it turned into I would even call it a micro VC fund today. We are focusing on hardware and deep tech. And what we do have and what we actually can really deliver to our investments in terms of smart capital is a good understanding on how to crack into industrial markets. And industrial markets are very exciting, but for many people, they are also kind of a black box. So I think that's really some knowledge we can share with our investments. And the portfolio includes technology such as semiconductor, plasma technologies, laser, water and Internet of Things in the water area, e-mobility, so these kind of things. And we also invested into 2 companies that are still at R&D stage. So in general, we expect the prototype to be in place, but in these 2 cases, we went even further down the line.
Wow. So if you look at it, you have these companies, in IoT, a lot of manufacturing type companies, e-mobility. What's the if you look at it right now, what are people talking about? What do they want to invest in today, Stefan? What kind of companies?
In this hardware and deep tech area?
Yeah.
Well, I could not provide you with some kind of empiric data, but I personally see a lot of development around everything. That's one area, around everything that is dealing with sensors, right? And you have sensor technology on one hand, but you also have to enable these sensors and to integrate them and to develop systems and use cases. So that's a big area. I mean, at the same time, you have all this green technology area, but this has been going on for quite some time already. We are also invested there in this water area. That's also, I mean, we would consider this also green tech, but also in the.
What do you mean by water area? What are you investing in exactly?
It's a company that actually, the claim of the company is water to data. So what they have is a generator and an autonomously operating electricity generator that is put into tubes, water pipelines. With the energy it generates, it is feeding, again, sensors. And the sensors can, for example, help for leak detection.
Wow. Well, that's cool. And so if you look at the state of the investments in Germany, are they still conservative like they were? I know you're not, but are they generally conservative? Because I
Well,
hear that a lot.
I would still consider myself to be quite conservative, but I mean, we work in this engineering field. That's different from the B2C sector. In the B2C sector, I see a lot of I have seen a lot of copy paste even from the US. So you see a lot of you see companies here in Germany in the B2C sector that take a certain business model from the US to Germany with the intention to establish it in Germany and then later on to sell it to some American
Sell
company
it
that
back to them. Sell it back, create it, and sell it back.
kind of, yeah.
I hear
That's
that a lot. That's copycat business is really good. It's
mhm,
a good way because you have a proven business model to really build your company and then get it back to that company. So
exactly. So in this area, Gary, I would not see a lot of I would not see a conservative investment climate, taking aside that there is the advantage in Germany that these copy paste businesses have already proven um, to be successful in the US. So the risk is a bit reduced. In the engineering industry or hardware and deep tech, it's different. I mean, I have to admit I'm not so familiar with the engineering sector in the US. Um, but the German mentality, it's actually an engineering mentality. I mean, I'm not sure if you know about the book David Coyle, Culture Code. So what is actually the core of a culture, right? And the core of the American culture is to be explorers, is to be adventurers. German culture is being engineers,
mhm.
creating things to perfection. And this goes along with a conservative attitude. I think the difference is very much what we see is that a German tech company takes much longer to go to market. Even software companies, they would like to have it at a perfection level first before getting it out to the market. In the US, this concept of actually letting your clients do the testing is very different.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Listen, Stefan, we're coming up to the top of the hour. So,
Mm.
closing thoughts and how do people get a hold of you? Because I'm sure they want to reach out. They're from all over the planet.
Yeah, I'm very happy if you listeners, watchers are interested to get in touch. Yeah, check our website gigahertz.ventures. Hertz, like the physical term, gigahertz, or contact me on LinkedIn. As simple as that.
No, that's great. Well, Stefan, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us one more time. And it's good seeing you, my friend. And to all of you out there, thanks for joining one more time. GSD presents Silicon Valley AI and Tech. And my name is Gary Fowler, and I'm your host. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. And I'll be back to you again on Thursday for another exciting edition. Thanks, Stefan. Thanks, everybody. Take care of yourselves.
Thanks a lot.